Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. A line from a popular children's nursery rhyme bred from naivety and fear. It displays the idea that words have no effect. It is this mentality that created one of the world's most destructive people and placed him in power, Adolf Hitler. During the carnage of the early 1900s in Germany, when German citizens were struggling with economic downfall, Adolf Hitler built a war through his speeches based on hatred and misguided hope. Hitler created conflicts between races made up of national shame and embarrassment from the blame of World War I, which caused people to compromise their morals in order to end Germany's economic depression from the war. This immediately led to ethnic cleansing in the form of the Holocaust. Decades later, Germany still has minimal ethnic diversity. Between 1888 and 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm II ruled as the Emperor of Germany. He antagonized the British and strived to surpass Britain. He wanted to expand Germany's power and boost the economy. World War I was slowly built up over years of countries displaying strong nationalism, militarism, the strife for imperialism, and the creation of alliances. In 1917, with little support from other countries, Germany began experiencing shortages of soldiers, ammo, and national pride. In 1918, news spread that Germany was planning to surrender to the Allied powers, and the German citizens questioned Wilhelm's rule. Later that year, Kaiser Wilhelm II was abdicated from the throne.
Between 1914 and 1918,
World War I put all countries in debt and needed to be paid for. Germany was blamed for the entirety of the war since they had a big hand in starting it. The Treaty of Versailles was written by the Allied powers after their victory in the war, demanding reparations from Germany and its allies. The reparations included separation of German territory. Certain territories were demilitarized, naval forces were lessened, army troop numbers were decreased, and the German Air Force was forbidden. Germany also became liable for damages in the war. Article 231. The Allied and associated governments affirm, and Germany accepts the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all the loss and damage. Germany had to take full responsibility for the war and all damages that went along with it. This created humiliation and shame for the German people. The Allied powers placed such harsh reparations on Germany out of fear of another war. The Allied powers thought that since it would take Germany so long to recover, they would not have to endure the suffering of another war so colossal. Germany was losing hope as the terms of the treaty began to weigh on them, and the realization of an unstable government became clear. Desperation was widespread as hope for a better country became a luxury they couldn't afford. Germany was on unstable ground and no longer had a government they could trust. So, when Adolf Hitler rose to power, the people were relieved. Hitler joined the service in Munich during World War I, and in 1919, Hitler was sent to a German Workers' Party meeting as a spy to report back to the German military about the actions taking place. The party was founded by Anton Drexler, a German citizen with anti-Semitic beliefs. Drexler gave Hitler a pamphlet called My Political Awakening. The pamphlet, written by Drexler himself, expressed the fascist ideals of the German Workers' Party, as well as degraded capitalism, and blamed the Jewish people for Germany's fragile state. Adolf Hitler decided that he liked the political ideas of the party and became a member. In 1921, Hitler became the leader of the German Workers' Party, which is commonly referred to as the Nazi Party today. In 1923, Hitler gave a speech in Munich which provided the country with hope as he planned out the changes that needed to be made in the country. He spoke passionately of the German intelligence and need for spirit. What we need is instinct and will. Most people have lost both through their culture. We have, it is true, a highly intellectual class, but it is lacking in energy. Although the whole country was struggling with economic depression, the Jewish community were doing a little better economically. They had slightly higher employment rates and income. The Jewish quickly became an easy target for German criticism. In 1925, Hitler wrote a book titled Mein Kampf, translated to My Struggle. It was the very beginning of his revolution, the way he spread his voice before he could be heard. A book which describes his future for Germany as well as his political ideology. The personification of the devil as the symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. He was never shy to point blame of German suffrage to the Jewish people, which is shown not only in his book, but in both his speeches and political actions as well. Over time, this created conflict between the different races in Germany as the Jewish earned much hate. Hitler's power was growing, and in 1932, he ran for Chancellor of Germany. He lost to the previous Chancellor, President Paul von Hindenburg, who was running again to keep Hitler out of power. Although Hitler did earn 37% of the vote and launched a large Nazi propaganda campaign which earned 230 seats in the government during the later election in July of 1932. The Reichstag, or government, was afraid of Hitler and his power, but could not ignore his increasing popularity, so they ignored their better judgment and appointed him chancellor in January of 1933 to please the people. The hope was that the people would be content with him in a power position without allowing him the actual authority of a chancellor, hoping the vice-chancellors and other non-Nazis in key government positions would contain and temper Hitler's more brutal tendencies. In February of 1933, Hitler gave his first speech as chancellor, calling attention to what was happening to the German people, allowing the citizens a voice. The misery of our people is horrible to behold. When this collapse finally reaches the German peasants, we will be faced with an immeasurable disaster. He not only realized the unsteady state of Germany, but stated a plan to help rebuild the country in about 8 years, providing a newfound hope. Within 4 years, the German peasant must be rescued. Within 4 years, unemployment must be finally overcome. At the same time, the conditions necessary for a revival in trade and commerce are provided. This speech became a strong turning point for Hitler's power. He set up trust within the country. The people would sacrifice their personal views for Germany because they truly believed he could save them. Hitler held annual rallies in Nuremberg, Germany, during which there were speeches from Hitler about his philosophies, parades, dancing, and celebration of Nazi pride. Swastikas were posted all over the venues to create an ocean of Nazism. The idea was to have those in the audience carry the message back to their hometowns. This helped to spread the Nazi ideology throughout the country. He was aware of who he was speaking to and how to address the audience. All propaganda must be popular, and its intellectual level must be adjusted to the most limited intelligence among those it is addressed to. Everyone understood his message. This helped keep a strong relationship with the people. His hold over an audience is not only found in his words, but can be seen in his intense body language as well as heard in the tone of his voice. As a speaker, Hitler exercises astonishing sway over a German audience. He alone can rouse the crowd to that state of political frenzy which makes all argument futile. His power came from his speeches, and it's all he needed. In 1938, Adolf Hitler was named Man of the Year by the American Time magazine. He was picked merely because he was the only person who had a lasting impact on the year, not because he deserved to be commended like the award is intended to do. Although the article was negative US propaganda, he was essentially being rewarded for destroying a race. The world sat by and watched him out of fear, not knowing what to do. The conflicts and destruction he had created were overlooked out of ignorance. It didn't matter that the world was afraid of who he was or the power he possessed. He got the attention that kept his Nazi regime alive. The impact of his speeches led to the Holocaust, a time when people were forced into concentration camps and slaughtered by the millions. People in these camps were mainly Jewish, as they were seen as a threat to Nazi ideology. Other people who were seen as weak or different were also put into the camps and treated inhumanely and tortured until death. It was Hitler's end goal to eradicate the Jewish and any other people who weren't his ideal human. He strived to create racial purity by establishing true German power, as he believed that they had the purest blood. The sacred mission of the German people to assemble and preserve the most valuable racial elements and raise them to the dominant position. The Nazi ideology was that each race had distinct behavior, characteristics, and abilities that could not change, and that all people were predetermined by their racial makeup, meaning that some races were stronger than others, the strongest race being the Germans. In 1944, Hitler was frantic and tried to continue his reign, but began to lose his hold on the German people. As German defeat in the war became increasingly clear, plans were made to remove Hitler from power. He became weak without an audience and lost all hold he had on the world. Without the support of his voice, his power crumbled, and he vanished. In 1945, he and his wife Eva Braun fled to a bunker in Berlin, where they both committed suicide. Historians estimate the total number of deaths to be 11 million. 6 million victims being Jewish, with the other 5 million victims encompassing others seen as a threat to the Germans. The ethnic diversity in Germany is minimal today because of the Nazi reign. The Holocaust was not only a mass genocide of all kinds of people, but created a mass migration, both attributing to the decrease of over 400,000 Jewish people in Germany. We tend to think it was all Germany, but it wasn't. The whole world turned a blind eye because they were afraid of him and afraid of war. Some truly believed he could save them, while others chose naivety because it was easy. I'd like to share a quote that perhaps should have been the mindset of the 1900s. Obstacles do not exist to be surrendered to, but only to be broken.
Right words that the world ignored, but perhaps could have helped.
What if I told you those same words were spoken by Adolf Hitler? That was his quote. If you didn't have the knowledge of what he did and you didn't know who he was, Does it make it easier to understand how they believed him? It is not at all okay that this happened, but I want you to understand the impact that words can have. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will always impact me. A twist on a popular children's nursery rhyme bred from knowledge and understanding.